Howdy everyone, welcome to another episode of Devlogs. This week I added locomotion to my video game project. Aside from that, I stumbled upon a problem in my demo scene that led to research. So here is my demo scene. Let me break down the setup. The cube you see in the corner of the elevator is a reference to where a Wise event is posting music. I had this scene set up to show off volume attenuation and 3D spatialization, all of which went well. The player enters play mode, and based on their distance from the elevator, the music can get quieter or louder. If the player turns their head left or right, they will hear the music pan based on where it is playing from. Here is where I encountered problems. While looking at the attenuation editor, I saw there could be line curves for other properties, such as a volume line for when obstructions are encountered. There were other lines as well, but what I decided to focus on was the obstruction line. My goal was to create a custom line for this, making it so that when the player is behind a wall or on the side of the elevator, sound is lessened by the object between the player and the emitter. Now, I knew this wasn't going to simply work by creating the curve, so I had to do some research and ended up finding a component called AkEmitterObstructionOcclusion. It sounded perfect since I had an emitter object and was trying to use the obstruction line. However, upon setting this up, here is what happened when I gave the object posting our song this AK component. Before playing, also note that I gave the wall a box collider so it could be recognized as an obstruction. Rather than partially lower the sound traveling from the emitter to the listener, the music is completely canceled once it meets an obstruction. I tried different configurations and toyed around with components and objects, but ultimately could not figure out a way to partially lower the sound like I had set up in Wise. I decided to disable the obstruction custom line curve to see if that information was even being conveyed to Unity. And without it, the AkEmitterObstructionOcclusion component still did its job and canceled out the music when obstructed. This led me to the website you're looking at now, where I wanted a better breakdown of the component and what it was doing. I had also looked up some other videos of people using Wise for obstruction and occlusion purposes, but the videos were older and not too insightful. In the end, it seemed like this component served a different purpose entirely from what I wanted. My next thought was to look into setting up occlusion and obstruction in Wise, as if it were a separate process from how we did volume attenuation based on player distance. I ended up on this page that breaks down the differences between occlusion and obstruction. What this page mentions aside from what those two things are is that they're achieving this setup with the use of aux sends. I've used aux sends before, but not in this manner, and was now curious. I decided to get my professor up to speed with my situation, and we ended up finding this video. It looked promising, so I planned on watching it. I didn't get to do that this week because I had to work on other projects, but there should be an update on this project next episode. Since that was all the time I had for that project, I now want to show you the other one I implemented VR locomotion into. Before we see the scene, I am not going to go over the configuration for moving around in VR, but we'll share this video series that is very helpful for setting it up. So this week, students and volunteers tested everyone's projects. This had been my first time putting together the XR rig in Unity, which allows for movement and interaction in the game with VR headsets and controllers. What you see now is a refurbished version of what playtesters had gone through. Aside from the movement and interaction being finicky, I realized that if you grabbed the radio and pushed it through a surface, it would just disappear forever. To fix this, I found a video that talks about creating a function to reset the game, and I wanted to put this in my project. However, I encountered a Wise-related problem that I wanted to share with you. So here's the function for resetting the scene in Unity. Here is the video I used for creating this. Simply put, this function resets our scene in Unity. I have this function tied to the button you see here in the top left. Let's say the player accidentally threw the radio or pushed it through a wall and out of bounds. If that happened, they could aim their controller array at the button, press the trigger, and the scene would reset. The problem that arose from this when I did this is that everything except for the music would properly reset, and every time I clicked the reset button, more and more layers of the song would begin playing. This ended up being because of a script made by Wise called AkInitializer. The initializer component is responsible for booting up the Wise sound engine, and on the 76th line in its code, there was a statement that said, "Don't destroy on load." This meant that when I reset the scene, everything but AkInitializer was getting destroyed and rebuilt. As you can see, I commented out the line. After saving and going into play mode, the problem was solved. Here are the results. When I threw the radio out of bounds and clicked the reset button, everything appropriately reset itself. I plan to do more with buttons and graphical user interfaces in order to better establish what the controls are for the game. I also want to implement a submit button that grades your final configuration of the room and provides a rating. Otherwise, I guess it's not really a game, is it? That's all for this week though. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.